episode 330.
You wouldn't think that the soft skills would be something that the industry is going, hey, I really need a technician that can speak to my customer. Well, guess what? I just sat through a whole piece at a Toyota Master Technician training piece on how to write a repair order.
Welcome, aftermarketers, to Remarkable Results Radio. Listen to learn just one thing from today's episode on your journey to remarkable results. Hey, hello, and welcome to the premier aftermarket talk radio podcast. Carm Capriato here with an interview about technician education. Why is this episode important to you? Ever hear of the technician shortage? Have you been affected by it? Yes, we've talked about it a lot on the shows. So when you get a chance to get the perspective of department chair of an automotive college, you listen and learn. You're with episode 330 of Remarkable Results Radio, and I want to thank Federal Mogul Motor Parts for bringing you this interview. When you need to search for parts and get the latest technical updates, or sign up for some Garage Rewards loyalty program, and who doesn't want some good swag for techs and shops? Go to fmmotorparts.com. Thank you, Federal Mogul Motor Parts. Hey, been to the website lately? Just moved it to a faster server so you benefit with quicker searches, and when you need to find specific content, you'll enjoy a better experience. If you've not seen the photo page, it's under the Resources tab on the website. Many great pics at industry events for you. remarkableresults.biz/photos is the shortcut. I'm always adding fresh stuff. Hey, I'd love to welcome new Facebook friends Andrew Knudsen, David Hernandez, Jeremy Ostrom, Leo Gilmore, and Mark Russo. And to my newest LinkedIn connections, Jeff Ford, Brian Herman, and Kip Nuesh. Thank you so much for connecting and getting involved in this powerful education resource. For all social links, find them at remarkableresults.biz/social. And don't forget, we rock with the weekly live Town Hall Academy every Friday at 12 noon Eastern. Find the live link, the webinar registration, and all repurposed episodes at remarkableresults.biz/academy. Now, here's an episode that will offer you a big learning curve on post-secondary education. Suffolk Community College on New York's Long Island has an automotive program in its 30th year. My guest is Dave Macholz, the department chair. Dave has an independent aftermarket history and is very transparent about the current and future value of training our future techs. Let me say, you must get involved in our automotive educational system. Join an advisory council. Work with our suppliers to work with the colleges to bring corporate training to these schools. Most important, work to help engage parents to consider the automotive skilled trades as a viable future for our children. We cover a large breadth of topics, including funding, graduation rates, mentoring, improving enrollment, internships, and capital spending to keep our colleges current with new tech. There's stuff here that you need to know. Find Dave's bio and the episode's cliff notes at remarkableresults.biz/E330. You'll benefit from this discussion. The more you know about the grassroots issues we face, the better you'll be able to solve them. With your help, the future is bright. Now, meet Dave Macholz. Hey, a warm welcome to Dave Macholz, Department Chair, Automotive Technology Program at Suffolk Community College. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Suffolk Community College. Wow, that just, I think of when I'm not too far from you guys. I'm up in Buffalo, maybe 8-9 hours. New York City, right? Long Island?
Yeah, Long Island is kind of a captive audience out here. I got to go over a bridge, through a tunnel, or get on a boat and go somewhere to ultimately get where you want to go. But yeah, it's an interesting place.
Cool. So you were telling me 6,000 registered repair shops on Long Island?
Between Nassau, Suffolk, Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and the lower part of Westchester County, there's over 6,000 repair facilities registered with the Department of Motor Vehicles.
So you got a lot of opportunity to place your students, right?
Absolutely. Almost no students to really cover that type of a need. It's daily. The amount of phone calls that we get and the amount of feedback that we get from the industry looking for people is huge.
You are really piquing my interest. I want to talk about this stuff. It is so important. We also want to talk about the 30th anniversary of the school, the thoughts and the plans on possibly a new facility, and your contributions to the industry. But first, let's dig into the real tough stuff, okay?
Sure.
How do we improve enrollment? And I know that is a huge question that I'm throwing at you. But we're talking about middle school, high school parents, counselors. Listen, you're in the thick of it. If you were the guy that was going to anoint, what needs to happen so you can double your enrollment, where would we start?
Boy, you need an industry that's all on the same page for starters. I think there's so many people that say, hey, if I just had some good people. Well, the reality is you're not going to get good people unless you're out there communicating that need, and that starts in schools. I read something interesting recently that talked about how everybody thinks it's a great idea for somebody else's kid to go into an automotive or trade, related field. But when it comes to their own kid, they go, yeah, maybe not. So I think that's where it somewhat starts too, is with parents. I mean, all the parents are ultimately making a lot of the decisions for their students at this point, at least in our region. They all view their student as a 4-year student that's going to go on to become the next doctor, lawyer, or whatever they decide that they're going to do for themselves. But the reality is, if the parents' perception is that our industry is not a good fit, why would the student's perception be anything different? So it starts with talking to your friends, family, relatives about what this industry is, what it's become, and ultimately, communicating that same message to, other constituencies as well.
So you're passionate about this, I know. What part are you playing at the middle school? I mean, does it start at the middle school?
I think it does. I think it starts at the middle school. I think it starts with, having some sort of vocational education, at the middle school level, the high school level. Many school districts here on the island have moved away from vocational education and outsourced that to, Board of Cooperative Education Services, or what we know as BOCES in New York. But in a lot of instances, they're now starting to relaunch these programs within their own districts for the reason that they're hearing from industry that, in the automotive field, you can make a good living. It's not just technician, but there are multiple other pathways that you can go into, whether it's business owner, or if, you're in the dealer world, it's, there's multiple facets within there as well.
Can you really make a good living? I'm going to challenge you right now. I mean, you're close to industry, you're close to the students, you're probably close to some alumni. And do they ever come to you and say, Professor, you kind of steered me wrong here. I'm just not making enough money?
Yeah, it's usually initially, because you think of it, like we have a local grocery store here, Aldi. I just recently saw something there that they're paying $13.50 an hour. All right, so my students, they're associate's degree students that are heading out into the workforce, and they're starting at $12 an hour. They're required to have their own tools. They're required to have 100% accuracy in terms of the jobs that they're doing. If you drop a can of something at Aldi, you clean it up, you mop it up, and you move on. Drop a car off a lift, it's a whole nother story. But for $12 an hour, we feel that we're going to get competent people to do these jobs. It's just not realistic.
So when you're out there talking to industry, and you sit down one-on-one with a shop owner, does this conversation ever come up? It says, listen, we've got to increase the wages, and what do you hear?
Comes up all the time. And you say, well, we have to increase the wages. And they say, well, yeah, but if Johnny could do X, Y, and Z, we would pay them that way. And I say to them, well, how do you think Johnny's going to get to X, Y, and Z? The current generation is not like the generation that, was my grandfather's or my dad's generation, where they grew up working on cars. This is, you pop the hood of a car nowadays and you look under the hood and what do you see? You see plastic. Many people are still not working on their own vehicles, and then to expect from them to go from zero to hero and expect to attract students at $12 an hour is just not realistic. So there's a lot of pushback on that, and sometimes for good reason. Not everybody's going to be a perfect fit right off the bat, but, it's also a matter of communicating to the industry. Like when you're working with the school, you have to have a process. So the process might be, in the first semester, you're seeing what they're capable of doing. In the second semester, those skills, move to something more complicated. But there has to be a pathway and a progression, and that pathway and progression includes a pay scale that follows it. And usually the students that come back to me, Carm, are the students that have been in this for a little while. When I say a little while, 6 months, a year, maybe even approaching 2 years, and they're still, at a repair shop doing oil changes or very, very basic service, and have not been exposed to, some of the things that ultimately drove them to want to do this career, like working on an engine or working on a transmission or, doing some of the more complex diagnostic jobs that exist. And they're never going to learn them unless they're given the opportunity to try.
The dialogue continues, exactly what you're talking about in our industry. And I'm wondering if it's falling on deaf ears. You know, it's like somebody needs to push the plug in or pull the plug out, do something. Do you ever have a chance to just sit down with industry and say, Dave, what do we got to do? And you lay this out. And without just preaching it and feeling good that I just got up on my soapbox, is there any way that you could say to a shop owner, listen, I want to work with you to make this happen. We can't keep, going through this 2-year education process and giving you people, and they fall out of the industry because you haven't challenged them, you haven't paid them. And can I work with you to prove that what we're telling you works?
Well, it's a great question, and it's a little bit complicated because the first part of it is you need the data to show that. So when I came into my position, we often in the community college didn't do a good job of keeping track of that type of data. So we knew we had a pretty good success rate of putting students out and they were working when they left, but we didn't know, a year or two down the road where they were. So yes, there are ways to do that. There are ways to look at that data and go back to a shop and say, you've had 25 students in the last, 10 years. How many of them still are employed by you? And that's probably a realistic number for a lot of the places that we deal with, especially on the dealer level, not necessarily in the independent level. And that is usually an eye-opener. They usually look at that and they go, wow, how did we have 25 students? And all of a sudden now I have 2. Well, so it really goes back to the question of, do we really have a technician shortage problem? I think really it's more of a retention problem than it is a shortage problem.
I'm on the advisory board of Erie Community College, just up here north of you guys, and the data was something we talked about in a meeting recently, and our department chair says, man, we have the data, so we got this big, incredible spreadsheet. And you're right, we went to the end to see what was going on with the alumni, and the numbers almost were identical. Somebody calls it a brain drain. I mean, we're teaching the kids, they're going out, and they're not staying. There's a lot going on in the industry. NASTEF is putting together, a road to great technicians, and it starts with not only the internships, but it starts with a great mentoring program inside shops. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. The students that we have that probably have the best success in the industry all are working with mentors. I can think of students both on the aftermarket side of the house as well as dealerships. If they're working with a mentor and that mentor is engaged in the process of helping that student, that is a game changer. Because now you're not expecting the student to do, let's say a cylinder head or a timing chain on a car by themselves the first time off. But if they observe their mentor doing it, and the next time the mentor says, you do this piece of it, and by the third or fourth time they're actually doing the job, now you didn't put the pressure on the student to ultimately come in on day one and say, you need to do this or you don't have a job here. But you built a pathway and you built confidence in that person so that when they go on to the next job, they're going to have that confidence that they need to ultimately do the task they're presented with. So the mentor piece is huge.
You know that 70% of professional technicians install Moog? Do you know who is best in class in engineering R&D? Do you know who holds 47 patents and has 28 dedicated engineers on staff? Yeah, Moog. You should know that 85% of Moog socket-style components are manufactured in North America, and that makes Moog best in class for manufacturing. And since 1966, every NASCAR championship has been won on Moog parts. But you knew that. I know why you install Moog. They solve your problems. Over the years, Moog has provided problem-solving innovations like a patented pressed-in cover plate, powdered metal gusher bearing technology, compression-loaded ball joints with a pre-installed integral dust boot, and vertical control arm bushings. You know why you install Moog. Enhanced durability, improved performance, and ease of installation. For more information, go to moogparts.com. Now you know. Brake jobs are a staple component of all successful shops, and getting the brake job right helps build a quality reputation for any shop. When the best is called for and stopping distance, rotor wear, and pad life are important to every shop and its customers, Wagner OEX brake pads are your only choice. Based on benchmark testing conducted by Link Engineering Company, Wagner OEX pads can stop a pickup, SUV, or CUV up to 50 feet sooner. Based on internal testing comparing new Wagner OEX to other Wagner offerings, the unique design of Wagner OEX increases pad life up to 2 times longer. The customized shape and slot design of each of the more than 114 SKUs creates a turbulent airflow that allows for cooler operation and improved stopping power for the vehicle on which it was designed. Wagner OEX cover 95% of the U.S. market of pickups, SUVs, and CUVs. Wagner has the science behind stopping perfected. They conduct 13,000 critical tests each year, and as of today, have 258 issued patents with 68 patents pending. Wagner has earned their stripes. Now they want to earn yours. Install Wagner OEX, the customized brake pad that can stop your customer's truck up to 50 feet sooner. So I was talking to Chris Chesney and Donnie Seifer about that, along with Jill Saunders, in a great episode I released recently on NASTAF, and we talked about mentoring. We talked about the fact that mentoring is not taught anywhere, yet it is a very critical piece, and you just don't take the seniorest member of the shop and make them the mentor to the young person because they may not really be qualified to be a mentor. Do you see that?
Absolutely. I know with our experience with Toyota with the T10 program, we've done some classes on mentoring, and I've contemplated and put some pieces together to start doing our own mentor training. But the problem with mentor training is the similar problem to why you don't have mentors to begin with, which is that in order for the mentor piece to work, the shops have to commit financially to the fact that there's going to be a cost involved in training young people. And if that cost is not understood, not only by the service manager, but the owner of the dealer, or in our case, in an independent repair facility, it's really the same in that if they don't understand that dynamic, it's not going to work, because how does that person get compensated? And how does the student's role or the mentee's role play into the mentor's pay structure and things of that nature? So that has to be figured out up front. And there has to really be a willingness and a commitment from the top down to make that work.
So we're writing about it, we're talking about it, we're podcasting about it, we're preaching about it, yet we look that ladder to the top is almost Everest-like. What's it going to take to really spin this industry around and gain the commitment from the independent level, the dealership level? I mean, I think they all have some blame here in spitting up and spitting out our young.
Yeah, it's kind of like anything else. You look in the political world, how does something happen? Well, people start talking about it first. So at least that's a first step. I feel like we've progressed somewhat in that regard. Honestly, Carm, if I had the answer, I think we probably wouldn't be having this conversation.
I'm looking for it. That's why I'm challenging the thought. I know people are well, that was a good question, Carm. Maybe Dave has the answer.
Here's my take. In order to make this work, you have to really look at the entire industry as a whole, and almost start over in a way and rethink the structure of how it is that we're doing things. When you look at how we, determine who's a qualified technician, how do you answer that? Is it certification? Is it training? Is it a combination, right? In the medical industry, my wife's a PA. Their certification is basically, okay, you have to go through a specific degree program, and at the end of which you're going to have to take a board exam. To maintain that certification, you're going to have to do continuing education, which we do a great job of doing in this industry, but we don't do a great job of requiring people to actually take it. So I think we have to look at this from not only a training perspective, a certification perspective, but also as a business model. I think really where things are going to get really, really difficult is that the technology on vehicles is changing to the point where you're not going to get the average person, the stereotypical grease monkey, to come in and do the tasks that are involved in what's needed for today's auto repair technicians. So with that, I think that's going to be probably enough of a driving force. At least we're having the conversation now, but ultimately to take action.
Do you think it's ever going to get so bad where the public is going to finally say, hey, look, we can't get our cars fixed? It takes 2 to 3 days to go out and get something fixed. Let's do something about it. And will there be a pull rather than a push like we're trying to do?
Yeah, I would say that it's probably already happening. I'm seeing it a little bit at our college, because most every major manufacturer at this point has some sort of technical training program to train technicians to come into this industry. They're not doing that because they are in the business of helping people. They're doing that because they're in the business of cars, and cars need to get fixed, because if cars don't get fixed, there becomes a quality perception issue. And when a quality perception issue exists, then sales start to suffer. So every single manufacturer is already seeing this. They're feeling it. And that's why, you're seeing it a little bit more, through programs like T10, Honda PAC, General Motors ASEP. Subaru is now doing a program called Subaru U, Fiat Chrysler. I mean, really every single manufacturer has something at this point designed to ultimately, capture that.
Are those students staying longer and continue to have gainful employment longer than the non-manufacturer programs?
I would say yes. And I would say probably due to the reason that there's a certification pathway, and that certification pathway has a monetary value to it.
Great answer. By the way, it's the answer I expected, because there is some accountability to that for the student. And I think for the manufacturer that looks these kids square in the eye and say, hey, you're in my program, we have a career path for you, career path in air quotes here. One of the thoughts that I had on the students that aren't going into a manufacturer's program, and as I was listening to you, I started to think about, forget about the extra workload that I'm going to offer here. just bear with my idea. What about a 6-month follow-up? And it doesn't have to be in person. It just could be, a questionnaire that the college sends to the place where the student's working. So you not only have the shop where the student's working, but you have the students, and you send out the questionnaire, and you really kind of drill into the quality of work, the challenges that are being met, the career pathing that you see, and maybe that data coming back to us, then, there's a red light, and all of a sudden, maybe Dave, maybe an instructor picks up the phone, and you do one weekly industry call a week that hooks you up and drives the message home to that shop and helps clarify the problems that are going on with the placed student.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. I think one of the challenges in that is a lot of times people don't answer surveys. So like you said, a point-to-point call, or a visit, we've actually built into our program the ability to go out and visit industry. So all of our students, as they come through the program, are actually registered in a cooperative course each semester and over the summer between their first and second year, where there's an instructor assigned specifically for that sole purpose of going out and pressing the flesh, so to speak, and getting out, meeting, shop owners, and ultimately kind of fielding some of their questions, concerns, listening, and ultimately coming back, and we kind of have a report out of what they heard, and we ultimately talk about that in advisory groups and try to build a plan for a curriculum and build a plan for soft skills and all these other pieces that come into play when you're hiring young people.
Excellent. I love that. Touch the flesh. Great program. Good. Internships. Mostly every student gets an internship?
Yes. So on Long Island, we have about, as I mentioned, in the neighborhood of 6,000 registered repair shops in the New York metro area here. So our biggest issue is having enough students to fill these internship roles. It's actually worked out well for us, because in a way we can help steer students towards better opportunities, and in some instances, make sure that they're in a situation where the shop is doing the right thing, and it's a safe environment for them. It's a responsible environment. The people around them are people that they can learn from professionally. So having that demand at this point in time is great for the student. And it's also it's an interesting competitive environment actually for the shops, more so than they realize, because as an instructor, you want to send your students ultimately to a place that's going to foster and nurture that desire that they have to ultimately be technicians or service personnel in the industry. But to answer your original question, every single one of our students comes through a pretty comprehensive program in which the first semester is kind of a vetting of skills. And by their second semester, providing they're ready to go out into the workforce, they're doing 80 hours in the spring semester of their first year, 400-hour internship over the summer between June, July, August, and then they come back and they do another 80 and another 80 subsequently in their third and fourth semesters. And upon graduation, just about 100% of our students are working.
What's the percent between dealer and independent?
I would say the percent between dealer and independent is probably, I would say 60% dealer and probably 40% independent, may even be even a little less independent. Most of that is for the reason that many of our programs, the cohorts or the group of students that come through are with the same technical program the whole way through. So for example, we run about 100 students through the program, 20 of which are in Toyota, 20 of which are in Honda, 20 of which are in GM, and 40 are in a general program. So they have an option of where they want to work.
So listen to that, everyone. 100 students. Well, that's really going to fill the need, isn't it?
That's not even scratching the surface, Carl.
I know. Same with the school that I'm involved in. And those are shattering numbers to me, earth-shattering numbers that they're small. Now, can you take 200, 300? Do you have a facilities issue?
We have a facilities issue. I'm glad you asked that. We actually have a big facilities issue because you get to a certain point to try to do hands-on instruction requires space. I'm sure you've seen many, shops around the country where there's 6 or 8 students huddled around a car. And as you well know, that model of trying to teach does not really work. So the current facility we're in was actually designed as a GM training center back in the early 90s. It was designed to have one bay for every classroom. So basically, you would have an instructor-led demo and very little hands-on skills. Well, as we talked about earlier, the hands-on skills that students are coming in with are much less of what they were probably 20 or 30 years ago when students had a higher exposure to working on their own cars. Technology was a little bit simpler at that point. You could do more on your own car. So that's facilitated the need for more hands-on instruction. So we're actually in the process of looking to build a new facility on our Brentwood campus, which is pretty much smack in the middle of Long Island, which if you look at a map is about 125 miles long or so. The goal there is to be able to add more capacity so that we can grow the program to better meet the needs of industry.
I'm impressed when you and I talked about it in our pre-call, 55,000 square feet facility. That's your dream, your goal, your idea, and your college president is behind this with you?
Yeah, our college president is 100% behind it because he's hearing the needs of industry. He actually came to one of our launch events when we became a school for Subaru. And he looked around and there was about 25 or 30 or so representatives from Subaru corporate in the room, the dealerships, different personnel. And he's like, wow, there's a lot of people here. And I said to him, do you realize this is one brand of car? I said, and you see the interest of all these people from one brand. I said, think about how many brands of vehicles there are. So that kind of turned his mind onto, wow, the automotive program is onto something here, and there is a profound need. I also brought up a few other dealerships and independent facilities around the island to him. There's one thing that stands out to me, and this is important to mention because independents are a lot of times in competition with the dealer market. But there's one dealer group here on Long Island that actually had a need for 123 technicians at one point. Granted, they have 24 dealerships on the island, but that's more students than I have come in on an annual basis. They needed that day, 123. And they're all growing. They're all adding capacity. So yes, the president is 100% behind, growing the program, sees it as a program for growth that includes, new manufacturer partners, but also the build out of our program to meet the needs of the aftermarket shops. I grew up in aftermarket shops, so my heart is there. And my grandfather worked for Snap-on for 25 years after having his own repair facility. And I worked and grew up in independent shops and never stepped foot to work in a dealer, just never knew it. But at the same time, seeing both ends of the industry now, both sides of those industries have to work together. And if they don't work together, it's a little bit interesting.
You've got independent aftermarket background, and is that what got you out to work with WorldPack?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I've always had a passion for training and for honing my skills, so to speak. And I actually was at the TST big event, which is an event that happens in...
I know it. Gee, truly, you got it.
Absolutely. Probably most people in the aftermarket are familiar with that. And I was at that event and I had a Suffolk Community College shirt on. And was there. I bumped into some of the guys from Autologic, who Autologic is actually a Long Island-based company here as well. And Justin Kidd, who's one of the managers at AutoLogic, says to me, he goes, "Hey, you went to Suffolk?" I said, "No, I work at Suffolk." He goes, "Oh, I went there." So we got to talking, and he said, "What do you do there?" And at that time, I was the lead instructor for the Toyota T10 program at Suffolk, and I was involved with the National T10 Instructor Community Board and curriculum development. And he says to me, we're looking with WorldPac to have some people teach some classes in the Asian market. Would you be interested in putting a class together for this expo event that WorldPac does every 2 years? So that was back in 2014. So I did some classes for their expo, and that turned into, hey, what about developing some 8-hour classes? And that's now progressed into me doing some consultation work and some management work with WorldPac into trying to identify instructors to come on board that are product area specialists that through agreements that WorldPac has with the OEs are able to deliver factory level content, but with a spin on it that it's for the aftermarket. So beautiful thing about that is they're getting that need to know information that a lot of times in the independent world is missing, but still getting it from somebody who's lived in their shoes, so to speak.
I love your connectivity to the industry. That's just great. And you also write occasionally for Motor Age?
Yeah. I do a few articles a year for Motor Age. I started doing that about 4 years ago, and I love it. It keeps me, all these different pieces. It's easy to kind of get stuck in a silo, so to speak, when you're in this industry, but the crossover between all these different pieces all sort of work together. The networking and the people that you meet, throughout the course of this, it's funny how it all ties together in the end. But yeah, I do probably about 3 or 4 articles for them typically a year, and I enjoy it.
Good for you. Back to the school. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but are you challenged with the capital budget you have to improve, equipment, training aids?
Yeah, you have to be creative. I think capital budgets for any college right now, especially a public college, are difficult. Most of your college budgets, I can tell you right now from doing some research on this recently, Suffolk Community College's budget is about $220 million a year. That $220 million, about probably 70 to 80% of it is faculty salary and benefits. So when you look at $220 million of taxpayer and student funding just to keep the place afloat every day, going to the administration and saying, hey, I need $1 million for new equipment is not a conversation they're really open to hearing, because they're trying to figure out how to come up with budget shortfalls that already exist to increasing healthcare costs and increasing contributions to, different pieces within, running a college. But as an administrator at a college, what I've realized is you don't get what you don't ask for, so you still have to ask. And then ultimately you have to get creative. So there's a lot of grants.
Yeah, let's talk about the creative thing. You just mentioned grants, and that's a good thing. What else?
Like in-kind donations, I would say, are another piece. So I think one of the main benefits of working with a lot of the corporate pieces is that most of them are fairly reasonable, and they realize you have other programs as well. So most of these programs have a general program, and a lot of times the downward donation from those programs help to keep afloat the general program. So a lot of programs around the country that I've experienced that don't have those connections with the OEs are at somewhat of a disadvantage, because they have to constantly find avenues for donation to try to get cars in, and they have to find, avenues for, different donations and whatnot. So I think that's probably a key point, is aligning yourself with the OEs somewhat, and they realize that you're not just teaching those particular students, but you're teaching a body of students. So a lot of those pieces cross over. And also, a lot of the advice that they have during, steering advisory committees holds a lot of weight, more so than saying, I had a group of people that were in and they said, we need this, and this. When you can go and you could say, I got a multi-billion-dollar corporation and they say we need to do this. They go, oh, okay. So a lot of times you get administration to listen a little bit better when you have industry involvement. And when I say industry involvement, yes, on the advisory board, you need shops, but you also need potentially OEs, potentially tool manufacturers, large auto parts companies, WorldPac being one of them.
Get involved is your message.
Absolutely. And it's got to be a cross section. If you look at how NATEF, or what is now the ASE Industry Alliance, the way that they design advisory boards is they don't want just people that are hiring the students. They want a cross section of industry. And I think the importance of that is having a cross section of industry is you have many different voices, not just one voice advocating for we need people, but you have also the outside entities that say, all right, well, we also have those support methods of helping you. So I think all those pieces tie together.
Excellent. The differences between being an educator 5 to 8 years ago and being an educator today?
I would say probably the students. The students have changed a little bit, I think. I think probably everybody said that 8 years ago too. Student population is different. I feel like right now, at this current moment in time today, it's become a bit of a challenge to find students that want to do this and ultimately find parents that want their students to do it. So I think that's probably the biggest change that I've seen in education is the student population.
What about admin versus actual teaching time? I mean, I hear a little bit that teaching isn't as fun as it used to be. Is that a true statement?
Probably more so at the secondary level than post-secondary. At the college level, I could speak for Suffolk. We have a very faculty-friendly organization. So our instructors have ample time to prepare. They're not buried in paperwork. I know a lot of the high school programs right now, there's a lot of reporting that has to be done within the classroom. And while we're, subject to assessment and, program review, we have a little bit more ability to deal with the day-to-day instructional piece and not so much of the outside piece. But I know a lot of the high schools are struggling mightily with the administrative workload.
As a department chair, Dave, you're really responsible for the vision and really thinking down the road for your organization and being sure that your curriculum and everything is set up for tomorrow. What's the future of collegiate automotive training going to look like in about 8 years?
Boy, that's a great question. I think about that every day, and sometimes it keeps me awake at night because cars are changing. We recently had Tesla at the school to talk about doing some training for their technicians. And one of the things that came up there was, how do we train people to ultimately work on tomorrow's technology? And I think really the key that I came away with after the conversation with them is that, it's kind of flipping the model of what we thought the automotive student was on its head. We need people that have excellent reading skills, right? Excellent comprehension, ability to reason, right? And problem solve and think critically, right? And also the soft skills, right? You wouldn't think that the soft skills would be something that the industry is going, hey, I really need a technician that can speak to my customer. Well, guess what? I just sat through a whole piece at a Toyota Master Technician training piece on how to write a repair order. This is the master technician and the dealer, and they're talking to them still about how to write a repair order. Why? Because most of them, when they're writing it, are still not doing it the way that they want it for multiple reasons, right? So it kind of goes back to these technicians of the future are going to have soft skills. They're going to have the comprehension. They're going to have the ability to critically think. And really, then the rest is pretty simple, right? We're changing technology at a rate of speed that we can't keep up with. So the individual has to keep up with it. How are they going to do that? By accessing information.
Yeah, so it's like there's these brainiacs sitting in this, in this lead-based room somewhere, coming up with all this technology, and they're moving at the speed of life. And no one wants to tell the rest of the world what they're working on. And they just say, we just love you to see what's happening. Well, we can't allow that. Someone needs to be an insider in all of that stuff and build stuff to get the word out, to get the education right. Well, thank you for that. Soft skills, by the way, you just laid a nice one in front of me. We're working with a couple of people in the industry to come up with a couple of either a podcast or a town hall academy on soft skills. And I think there needs to be a lot of discussion on that because I'm hearing it and there are people out there saying soft skills. And we're not doing it. We're not teaching it. So I'm glad to hear that you're thinking that through. Hey, finally, your 30th year at Suffolk College. So let's have a party.
Yeah, that's the plan. Actually, May 3rd, 2018, we're having a what's called our Salute to Excellence Gala, which is a event that's run by our college foundation, who's basically our 501c3 at the college that helps us raise money for things like scholarships and expansion of facilities. So going back to being creative, when we had the idea that this was the 30th anniversary of the program, I said, this is an opportunity we can't let get away. We need to recognize our industry partners. We need to recognize our graduates, our students, and make this event a big event for the current program, but also the future 30 years of the program, what it looks like. So this event will be not only a celebration, but it'll actually be somewhat of a visioning event for what the next 30 years looks like at Suffolk, including facilities and programming and pathways for industry to be directly involved in creating a pipeline of certified personnel, again, with the soft skills, with the technical skills, and ultimately, the full package of what they need as employers here on Long Island.
Will this be a type of fundraiser or not?
It is. It's a fundraising event. So there's a ticket fee to attend the event. All that money goes right to our 501c3 towards student scholarships. There are
strictly for scholarships, but nothing for capital improvements, for example.
At this point, we are working towards creating a capital campaign. So we'll actually start to lay the groundwork for that capital campaign at this event. So as we build the plan to build a new facility, a key tie-in there will be industry participation to help build that facility out with appropriate tools, equipment, and the like.
And so everybody who's listening to this that's involved in a college, and every college administrator who will have a chance to listen to you, Dave, these are all great pointers and great ideas. Man, I'll tell you, I enjoy this. You're doing a lot of great things down there at Suffolk. Continued success. Dave Macholz, Department Chair, Automotive Technology at Suffolk Community College. Any final words?
Well, thank you for what you do. Without having a dialogue, there can't be any action, right? Because what would people be acting on? So these podcasts, I think, go a long way towards connecting education, the aftermarket, and bringing everything together into one cohesive place. So thank you for what you do. And the one thing I would say to the entire industry is everybody has to do their part. So no matter if you think you're one person, you have to do something. If you want to, create a change, that's how it all begins. It begins with you.
Amen, Dave. Thanks, Dave Macholz. Smart, enlightening, insightful, and you did help us all understand the opportunities and challenges we face with post-secondary automotive education. Find the show notes with Dave at remarkableresults.biz/E330. Now, please get involved at every level of education. The shortage of skilled technicians does start at the middle school level. We collectively in the industry need to get the message to the parents, teachers, counselors, principals, superintendents, and even college presidents. They must see the industry's involvement in the future of automotive technology education programs, and we must be evangelists for keeping and growing the automotive technology programs at all levels of education. Hey, thanks for being here to show your support. Glad you enjoy. Share this so that all ships rise.
Thanks for being on board to listen and learn from the premier automotive aftermarket podcast. Until next time.